Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. But where the conversation comes from, Big Ten Media Days. Kevin Warren, the commissioner, is there. Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, is there. Pete Thamel asked Gene Smith about whatever. And one of the things that came up was a 16-team playoff. Here is a tweet that Pete Thamel from ESPN sent out on Tuesday afternoon. For those keeping score at home, it was 11:52 a.m., so it must have been Tuesday morning by technicality. What Pete Thamel tweeted, one new wrinkle that came up when Big Ten ADs met this week about the playoff is increased conversation about a 16-team playoff. Ohio State AD Gene Smith said to ESPN, 16 just seems to be out there. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore it. Well, first of all, this isn't a weird mole that you have on the side of your head that you can't ignore. Like, you can't ignore a 16-team playoff. But the fact that Gene Smith is acknowledging it leads me to believe that when you combine this piece of information with something that I talked about last week, we're headed very soon to an expanded college football playoff, maybe even more expansion than we want. But if you remember, and if you listen to this show, last week Greg Sankey at SEC Media Days, the commissioner of the SEC, was asked about the future of SEC scheduling. Right now, the SEC plays 8 regular season games against each other, 8 league games. He kind of hinted, hey, once Texas and Oklahoma come, we may get to 9. And then he kind of gave a weird wink, wink, nod, nod, where he said something to the effect of, oh, by the way, we're also looking at a model where we play 10 league games. Just kidding. Just making sure you guys were paying attention. And as I said on last week's show, when there are billions of dollars at stake in the regular season, billions of dollars with a B in the postseason, you don't make jokes. And when Greg Sankey said that out loud, to me, it hinted that we're probably getting a pretty expanded playoff because you can't have 10 SEC regular season games unless you expect to have a large postseason. And so when you combine the Greg Sankey comments with the Gene Smith comments, I think we're starting. Those two guys don't say what they have said if they're just wink, wink, nod, nod, hinting at it. They're not telling you it could happen. They're trying to tell you right now that it will happen and to brace yourself because, like it or not, an expanded playoff is coming. And so I believe this is something coming down the road because, again, you have to remember that in the future, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to carry so much weight in terms of the power structure of how college football looks. And those two are going to have the biggest seat at the table in terms of what the playoff looks like because they are going to have the most power. They're making the most money. They have the ears of the TV executives. And so they're going to determine what the future of the college football playoff looks like. And I'm telling you, whether it's 12, whether it's 16, it's getting expanded and it's getting expanded soon. Now, do I like it? I don't like it. And as a matter of fact, I think you can argue with the recent moves, there's less reason to expand the playoff than ever before. I mean, just think about it at its most basic level. Right now, essentially outside of Notre Dame and Clemson, and maybe Oregon and Miami, and we'll see what happens with Mario Cristobal and all that, basically everybody that matters in college football in the next 5 years is either going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten. USC's going to the Big Ten along with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin. All those schools, Michigan State, don't want to forget anybody, leave anybody out. And in the SEC, we're now adding Texas and Oklahoma to Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M, on and on and on and on and on. And so I actually think there's an argument. And by the way, we could get another round of expansion where Clemson ends up in the SEC, where Notre Dame ends up in the Big Ten. And so I actually think there's an argument now that there's less of a reason to expand the college football playoff than there was before. If all these good teams are consolidated to 2 conferences, why do we need a larger postseason? We're going to play a thing called an SEC championship game to determine who the best team is in the SEC. So why do we need a 16-team college football playoff and put the 5th best team in the SEC just to get their brains beat in by the best team in the SEC, which we already determined in the regular season? Same in the Big Ten. Do we need to put Michigan State or Wisconsin or Iowa into a 16-team playoff just to get destroyed by Ohio State like they did in the regular season? And so I think on the one hand, you can argue that there is less of a reason to expand the playoff now than ever before. Let me also say this, too. It just at its most basic level doesn't make any sense. And I want to give credit to somebody, Dan Beyer, Fox Sports Radio. I was filling in with Dan on Tuesday when the quotes came out about the Big Ten, about this potential 16-team playoff. And I thought he brought up a great point. He said every sport in America, outside of college football and the NFL, is doing whatever they can to make their regular season more interesting. Too many games, too many meaningless games, none of it matters. And so the NBA, college basketball, which I love, Major League Baseball, they're having trouble engaging an audience all regular season long because the regular season is too long. Why do you think the NBA is putting in that play-in tournament? Why do you think Major League Baseball is changing rules every second on the second? Why do you think college basketball is playing early season games on aircraft carriers and Champions Classic and Duke versus Kentucky and Gavitt games? It's to try to get you engaged because their regular seasons are too long. So think about this at the most basic level and why it doesn't really make sense to expand the playoff, although nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to listen to me. But at the same time, every other sport on the planet is trying to get you interested in its regular season. College football already has you. They've got you by the collar. They got you jacked up against the wall. You got nowhere to go. And they're saying, you know what we want to do? We want to expand the playoff and make the regular season less interesting for you guys and girls. At the most basic level, it makes absolutely no sense, and I don't like it. Now, one thing you guys and girls know about me, one thing about this show, I try not to get too emotional, get too upset about things that I can't control. And if this is where we're going, then this is where we're going. Kevin Warren and Greg Sankey don't care about what Aaron Torres thinks. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to talk about it, but eventually I'm going to move on. But what I will say is something that I've talked about quite a bit on this show. It's such a shame that the people that are making decisions for college sports and college football specifically do not care about the sport itself, do not care about the players, do not care about the coaches, do not care about you, the consumer. That is the most disappointing thing to me at all. Because I do think there's a way that you can run a business to make money while also caring about the consumer. For all the criticism Roger Goodell gets, I think he does a great job with this. Roger Goodell, he adds stuff because his consumer is telling him that they want it. The reason they play all those games in London is because they sell out all of them in London. It's another TV window. Now everybody on the East Coast gets up at 9 a.m. and has football to watch. That's why they play those games in London. The reason we have Thursday night games is because people wanted NFL on Thursday. We had Tuesday and Wednesday games the last couple of years because of COVID, and people watch those. We have Saturday night games when college football ends. But the reason Roger Goodell does all that is not only because it makes a lot of money, it's because it's what the consumer wants. What's disappointing about college football is that college football isn't making any of these decisions because it's what you guys and girls want. They're doing it strictly because of money and strictly not for the good of the product. And that is what I worry about. And to go back to what I said, I think there's more of an argument now to not expand the playoff because of the consolidation of power in those top two conferences. And I also just think that when you look at it at its most basic level, I don't know that we need to. I think there's less of an argument to expand the playoff now because of the fact that, again, everybody's going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten. So I don't mean to belabor the point. We can move on. But I will say it's just a little bit disappointing. And I really do look at it and say, like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, but I know why it's being done. It's over money rather than the consumer, and it really sucks.